She told me to sit at the back on her wedding day. They all laughed at me, but before the ceremony ended, her groom was on his knees, begging the same men she called worthless. The air in the room was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and arrogance. Dorcas looked at her reflection, admiring the diamond necklace that sparkled against her skin. She picked up the invitation, her lips curling into a sharp, cold smile. With a flick of her wrist, she wrote the words that were meant to be a final blow. To Tunde, I have reserved a seat for you at the back. Come and see what a real provider looks like. She didn't want him there to celebrate. She wanted him to witness the height of the mountain she had climbed after stepping off his back. For a brief second, she paused. Then she signed it anyway. Tunde sat in his glass office. He remembered the days when his hands were permanently stained with cement and his only luxury was Dorcas' smile. He placed the invitation, Chidi words Dorcas, next to a gold-plated pen on his desk. He picked up its intercom. Cancel my Saturday's meetings, he said. I have an appointment with a woman who wants to humiliate me. For a moment, his fingers went still. Tunde remembered all he had sacrificed for her without asking anything in return. The moment Dorcas got a job, it became a burden. She looked at him with disgust as he reached out to congratulate her, and she felt a wave of shame and discomfort. It started slowly. She stopped receiving half of his calls. She stopped allowing him to touch her. Gradually, she stopped visiting him. Tunde never gave up. He would call, send messages, and plead for forgiveness, even when he hadn't wronged her in any way. One day, Tunde went to her flat. He had missed her so much. She opened the door for him. There was no welcome. She continued drinking champagne. She didn't offer him anything. She focused on her phone, maintaining silence, distance, and passive aggression. Tunde called her sweetie, darling, pretty, and my future wife. There was no response from her. Please, can you tell me what's going on? He asked. Tunde, I appreciate all you've done for me, paying my school fees, bills, taking care of me, loving me beyond words, and putting me first before your needs. I know you'd rather give me money than give your siblings and your mom who raised you, but you are a weak man. Tunde closed his eyes. His ears ached. His heartbeat raced. Is that all? Tunde asked. We are not on the same level, Tunde, she said, her voice as sharp as a razor. You have no vision. You smell like the construction site you love so much. I need a man who belongs in the boardroom, not a trench. Please leave. Tunde was quiet for a while. Good luck, he said and left. Dorcas and her friends giggled the minute he left. Tunde got home that night. Instead of being angry, he felt relieved. Most of the buildings Tunde had been working on actually belonged to him. He was a quiet investor. He was never loud. And for the first time, he was glad he hadn't married her. And she showed her true color the minute she felt she was financially okay. Chidi checked his reflection for the 10th time, his hands trembling slightly. Today wasn't just his wedding, it was the day his career would change forever. The chairman promised to stop by. He whispered to his best man, the man who owns global logistics. If I impress him today, I will be the youngest senior director in the company's history. He looked at Dorcas' photo and smiled. He had won the ultimate prize, a woman of status. Unknown to him, trouble was brewing. People gathered outside to look at a silent parade of power that made the wedding guests whisper in hushed tones. Dorcas stood at the entrance, her silk veil catching the breeze, a look of confusion crossing her face. She hadn't expected anyone this important so early. When the back door opened, a man in charcoal gray custom suit stepped out, his presence commanding the very air around her. It was Tunde, but not the man she remembered. He didn't look like a laborer. He looked like a man who owned the streets and everything beyond it. What are you doing here in that suit, Tunde? Dorcas whispered, her voice a sharp hiss that cut through the music. She looked at his polished shoes and his gold watch, her eyes burned with a mist of envy and rage. Did you rent this just to embarrass me? I told you, your seat is the very last row near the door. Tunde didn't flinch. He simply looked at her with a quiet, devastating pity. I am exactly where I need to be, he replied. Don't worry about my seat, worry about your own. At the front door of the church, Chidi was a man unraveling. Every time the heavy oak door swung open, his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He had spent months bragging to Dorcas about his connections, but he was a small fish in a deep ocean. The chairman is late, he muttered to his best man, his voice trembling. If he doesn't show up, the major is dead, and I'm back to being a junior clerk. He looked at Dorcas, who was now walking toward him with a triumphant smile, unaware that the ground beneath their feet was cracking. Tunde sat at the back row with some power brokers in black suits. She didn't realize that the men she had mocked held the power to turn her gold into ash with a single signature. The music stopped. The MC adjusted his glasses, his expression turning into one of profound reverence. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, he began, his voice echoing through the church. We are honored to welcome the chairman and founder of Global Logistics. Dorcas' heart leaped. She turned toward the entrance. She didn't see the chairman at the door. She saw Chidi, her husband-to-be, staring at the men in the very last row. Tunde did not rush. He moved with measured grace of a man who had already won the war before the first shot was fired. Each step on the marble floor sounded like a heartbeat in the silent church. Dorcas stood frozen, her hand still clutching her expensive bouquet so hard the stems began to snap. She watched the laborer she had mocked walk past the society guests, who were now whispering his name with reverence. The back row was no longer a place of shame. It was the starting point of her undoing. Chidi's world collapsed in a single heartbeat. The chairman he had spent months preparing to impress was the very man Dorcas had described as a worthless beggar. He reached Tunde and bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the cold stone. Chairman, sir, I didn't know. He stammered, his voice cracking with a fear that filled the entire church hall. The groom, who Dorcas thought was a lion, was now a trembling servant in front of the men she had discarded. Tunde looked at Dorcas, his eyes holding a quiet, devastating stillness. He didn't need to shout to be heard. The silence around him was loud enough. Dorcas tried to speak, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but no sound came out. She looked at the shako suit she thought was rented and the gold watch she thought was fake, and finally saw the truth. You asked me to come and see what a real provider looks like, Dorcas, Tunde said, his voice a low rumble. So I came. I wanted to see the man you chose over the one who carried cement in the rain to pay for your dreams. The guests gasped as the truth began to leak into the room like a cold draft. Every word was a lash, stripping away the layers of Dorcas' pride until she stood bare in front of everyone she had tried to impress. Tunde turned his gaze to Chidi. Chidi said calmly, you are an ambitious man. You made a mistake. You are about to marry a woman who thinks a man's worth is measured by the logo on his car, not the character in his heart. Chidi looked at Dorcas with a sudden sharp flash of hatred. You bragged about the major, Chidi. Tunde continued, his voice devoid of anger, which made it even more terrifying. But Global Logistics does not partner with men who lack discernment. Consider your promotion retracted. He pleaded with him to please not judge him because of the woman he was about to marry. Best of luck, Chidi, he said, and gave him a discouraging stare to not bother him any further. Chidi, wait, he's lying. He's just a laborer. Dorcas screamed, her voice shrill and desperate, but her words fell on deaf ears. Chidi looked at her as if she were a venomous snake. is the chairman. You fool, he is. You told me he was nothing, but you've ruined us both. The real man Dorcas had boasted about was now walking away from her, leaving her standing alone at the altar she had built out of lies. Tunde didn't look back. He walked toward the light, leaving the darkness of the church and the bitterness of the past behind him. As he reached the door, he stopped for 1 second. "Oh, Dorcas," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The seat in the back was perfect. It gave me the best view of the moment. You realized you threw away a diamond to chase a piece of glass. He stepped out into the sun, the doors closing behind him with a final heavy thud. Chidi walked out too, and he was done with her. The wedding was over. The story was just beginning. The video of the chairman's revenge hit the internet within the hour, turning Dorcas' perfect day into a global symbol of shame. She had wanted the world to watch her win. Instead, they watched her lose everything she had traded her soul for. Chidi's career collapsed, and Dorcas found herself back in the very dust she had tried so hard to brush off her feet. A few hours later, she got a dismissal message on her phone, as she had previously been warned for insubordination. Unknown to her, it was Tunde who gave her the job, and her company was a subsidiary of Global Logistics. She wept and tried to reach out to Tunde, but none of her calls were replied. Her wedding had been cancelled, and she is now jobless. Your value does not decrease because someone fails to see it. The people who try to break you are often the ones who cannot build anything themselves. Tunde carried the weight of the world so Dorcas could fly, only for her to forget who gave her the wings. But remember, the same hands that build you can also tear you down. Stay humble, stay real, for the gold thread of truth never breaks.